Good morning, everybody. I'm Shonima Venugopal, and I welcome you all to this national webinar on the National Education Policy 2020, Structural and Curricular Reform of Higher Education, being jointly organized by the Faculty of Family and Community Sciences and the Internal Quality Assurance Cell, the Maharaja Sayajirao University of Baroda. We begin today's proceedings with the university song. Could I request the technical team to please play the university song?
Like we can reduce now.
Thank you. Let me now introduce to this esteemed audience Professor Anjali Karolia. Professor Anjali Karolia is the Dean, the Faculty of the Faculty of Family and Community Sciences, and is the former head of the Department of Clothing and Textiles, the Maharaja Sayajirao University of Baroda. Madam is also the past president of the Home Science Association of India. She has received a total of 8 fellowships and awards during her illustrious career and has over 38 years of research and teaching experience. I request Professor Anjali Karolia, Dean, Faculty of Family and Community Sciences, to welcome the gathering.
Thank you, Shonima. Honorable Vice Chancellor, the Maharaja Sayajirao University of Baroda, Professor Parimal Vyas, Professor Premavati Vijayan, Honorable Vice Chancellor, Avinash Lingam University of Higher Education, Coimbatore, Professor Namita Ranganathan, Department of Education, Delhi University, Professor Chakravarti, Lecturer, IQAC, the Maharaja Sayajirao University of Baroda, all deans and principals of the various faculties and constituent colleges, syndicate and senate members, my heads of department, all participants, namaskar and a very good morning. It gives me immense pleasure to welcome each one of you on behalf of the Faculty of Family and Community Sciences the Maharaja Sayajirao University of Baroda, to this national webinar on the theme NEP 2020 Structural and Curricular Reforms in Higher Education. I take this opportunity to introduce the Faculty of Family and Community Sciences. The vision statement of our faculty reads, striving to create an equitable and gender-just society that ensures better quality of life to individuals, families, and communities. And its mission is to create professionals with sound knowledge base and dynamic applications for government, industry, voluntary organization, and entrepreneurship, sustain an environment of academic excellence and innovative research with a conscious focus on indigenous perspectives, and enable students to think global and act local, contribute to positive social change through transfer of technical know-how to academic, research, and training institutions and community. The seed of this faculty was sown when the former Baroda state government created on 17th of December 1948 a Women's Education Trust Fund to establish a home science college in Baroda. The trustees handed over this educational fund to the newly established Maharaja Sayajirao University of Baroda for constructing a building for the Faculty of Home Science. And so on 3rd July 1950 was established the Faculty of Home Science. And from the beginning, has been open to both genders, which was forward thinking of that time. Evolving from its humble beginnings, the faculty made conscious efforts towards redefining and broadening its view in response to the rapidly changing national and global scenario. There has been introduction of several new courses, modification of the syllabus and curriculum as per the changing demands of the society and industry. Rechristened as the Family of Family and Community Sciences at the turn of the millennium, it has today evolved into a premier institute including dynamic fields of studies. Grounded in the philosophy of ensuring individual, family, and social well-being, the program offers a judicious mix of basic and applied disciplines. The faculty comprises of 5 major fields of specialization and a general level program, and these are extension and education, clothing and textiles, family and community resource management, foods and nutrition, human development and family studies. We offer 11 undergraduate BSc honors programs and 1 general pass course, 9 postgraduate degree programs with research, 4 PG diplomas, and a doctoral degree in all the 5 subject areas. It also houses under its umbrella the Institute of Fashion Technology, which offers 3 bachelor's degree programs and a PG diploma. Some of the defining features of the Faculty of Family and Community Sciences is its professional culture, vibrant teaching and learning ethos, engagement with issues of social relevance, teamwork, and intrinsic motivation to excel. The discipline of home science or the family and community sciences, being an applied discipline, can play a major role in contributing to the quality of life at the micro and macro level, which would ultimately lead to our nation's development. The last 2 biennial conferences organized by the Home Science Association of India were on the Sustainable Development Goals, also known as the Global Goals adopted by all the United Nations member states, including India in 2015, to end poverty, protect the planet, and ensure that all people enjoy peace and prosperity by 2030. Out of the 17 SDGs laid out, our discipline, 5 specializations, can play in at least 10 of the set goals. In the conferences held in 2018 and early 2020, In-depth discussions on the development of our curriculum, research areas, and innovation for promoting and achieving these goals took place. We dwelled and reflected upon the social, economic, and environmental realities and current needs of our communities. Some points which were considered and the inclusion in the curriculum suggested were interdisciplinary studies with emphasis on environmental issues, skill development and self-employment, researches in indigenous practices and traditional knowledge, consumer advocacy and protection, development of career-oriented courses, empowerment of women and emphasis on gender equality, quality of life, sanitation, good food and water, safe food and water, health and nutrition. In July 2020, the new National Education Policy was passed by the Parliament, and it aims at making the education system more holistic, flexible, multidisciplinary, aligned to the needs of the 21st century and the 2030 Sustainable Development Goals. The faculty has already started undertaking and modifying its curriculum and research thrust areas in view of the SDGs, but now a thought needs to be given, keeping in mind the structural changes suggested by the National Education Policy. The National Education Policy 2020 aims at providing a more flexible study route in the higher education sector, letting students choose their academic journey with multiple entry and exit options. With the aim of providing more flexibility, a student can take advantage of multiple exit options that are to be introduced. Studying for 1 year, 2 year, 3 year, or 4 years, accordingly, a student would be awarded a diploma, a certificate, a bachelor's degree, or a 4-year degree. It could earn him with a degree with research. Also, it would provide students an opportunity to experience the full range of holistic education with a focus on the chosen major and minor as per their choice. Another important aspect of the NEP 2020 is that the UG degree programs will be credit-based, and an academic bank of credit will be available to digitally store the credits. So the intent of the policy is ideal, but it is in the proper and successful implementation where lies the key to success. And so to deliberate on some of these issues, this webinar with the theme National Education Policy 2020, Structural Curricular Change Reforms in Higher Education has been organized. And we have with us two eminent speakers amongst us today, Professor Premavati Vijayanan and Professor Namita Ranganathan, and also our very own Vice Chancellor, Professor Parimal Vyas, to throw light and to lead us to how to implement this in the best possible way. I once again welcome all to this national webinar, and I sincerely hope that the discussions and interactions held here today would help us plan to implement the NEP 2020 meticulously in our respective areas of study. Thank you and welcome once again.
Thank you so much, ma'am. We are fortunate to have with us here today Dr. B.S. Chakrabarty. Dr. Chakrabarty is the director of the Internal Quality Assurance Cell, the Maharaja Sayajirao University of Baroda. Sir is also the head of the Department of Applied Physics, Faculty of Technology and Engineering, and has more than 26 years of research and teaching experience. Sir has always taken a keen personal interest in all aspects of the university. May I request Dr. Chakrabarty, Director, IQAC, the Maharaja Sayajirao University of Baroda, to tell us more about the theme of this national webinar.
Thank you, Dr. Shonima. Honorable Vice Chancellor of the Maharaja Sayajirao University of Baroda, Professor Parimal Vyas. Honorable Vice Chancellor of the Avinash Lingam Institute of Home Science and Higher Education for Women, Coimbatore, Dr. Premavati Vijayan. Respected Professor Namita Ranganathan from the Central Institute of Education, University of Delhi. Professor Anjali Karolia, the Dean, Faculty of Family and Community Sciences, Senate and Syndicate members, Deans of Faculties, Heads of Departments, dear participants, ladies and gentlemen, a very good morning to all of you. Aap sabhi ko mera namaskar. And I once again welcome you to this webinar, a very important topic on behalf of the Maharaja Sayaji Rao University of Baroda. Ever since our Honorable Prime Minister gave us the call in the conclave on 7th August, calling all the universities to spread the message of this national education policy and to take it forward towards implementation. This university has arranged a series of webinars on national education policy. And for the benefit of the panelists as well as the participants, let me inform you that this is the 14th webinar in the series of the webinars for national education policy. We have touched upon almost all the aspects of national education policy so far. But I think the most important of it is the implementation part. And with the implementation comes the major aspect of structural reforms, structural changes. And the last two webinars, one that was addressed by Professor Anirudh on Monday, that is 28th, and today's webinar, they're both dedicated on the structural aspects and the implementation of the NEP 2020. I won't go into the technical aspects as there are eminent speakers with us. But due to our efforts, which are pioneered by our Honorable Vice Chancellor, I would say even inspired by him, conceptualized by him and initiated by him, today, the state of Gujarat, as far as the higher education is concerned, looks towards the Maharaja Sayaji Rao University of Baroda to spearhead the efforts towards implementing the national education policy in the state of Gujarat. Our Honorable Vice Chancellor will speak more on it. We began this series of webinars in August, and today is the last webinar of the series in September, but certainly not the last on the national education policy. And I think I should take this opportunity to compliment all the deans of the faculties who have helped us in doing these webinars, and a special compliment for the technical team who has given very robust support for all this. Professor Parimal Vyas is a dual faculty in the faculties of management studies as well as the faculty of commerce. He is a council member of the National Board of Accreditation and a member empowered National Committee of UGC CARE Journals. He is an executive council member of State Higher Education Council of Government of Gujarat. That is just to talk about one of the committees. He is in several committees in the government of Gujarat. And of course, under his leadership, we have really taken huge strides. He has been nominated several times as chairman of the NAC Tier team, the chairman in several committees constituted by the University Grants Commission also. May I now request Professor Parimal Vyas to kindly address the webinar. Over to you, sir. Thank you.
Namaskar, Dr. Chakravarti. I hope I'm audible and
yes, you're audible, sir. You're audible.
Suprabhat, Namaskar, and at the outset, my greetings to Dean Faculty of Family and Community Science and entire team. I could see all the panelists who are with us today. Faculty consists of a very senior team of academicians and researchers. So it's a matter of pleasure because Professor Anjali Karolia has created an opportunity for me to share some of my thoughts on implementation of the national education policy, and we have a lot of expectations and challenges. from the faculty. So though we have attendees, more than 350 attendees are with us today in this national webinar. Two institutes, they have come together. I am aware of Avinash Lingam Institute of Higher Education and the contribution in the similar domain. I'm very happy today to have with us Professor Premavati Vijayan, who is Honorable Vice Chancellor of Avinash Lingam Institute for Home Science and Higher Education for Women. We are equally happy and pleased to have Professor Namita from the Department of Education, Central Institute of Education from University of Delhi. And what am I going to do is that let me try to create a perspective. Let me build a perspective. We have one expert, in the field of education, in the domain of education. And now we have a very accomplished senior, educationist and Honorable Vice Chancellor in the similar domain of home science. We are all aware of that at the Maharaja Sayajirao University of Baroda, it was known as Faculty of Home Science. And I believe the current team had a lot of challenges. They have passed through a lot of challenges, and now I'm very happy that now we have identified it. Now we have renamed it as Faculty of Family and Community Science. Now these two words are very important, and they are very, very important. I would request all the colleagues of the Faculty of Family and Community Science that please look at it. Now we are known as Faculty of Family and Community Science. Now I believe because today I'm taking a different route. Everybody knows about the National Education Policy. My greetings to Professor Anjali, a well articulated draft, and she has brought out some of the highlights, characteristics, the features of the National Education Policy. But I thought let me build today's discussion, because it would be very, very focused, and then what strategy we would like to adopt for the implementation of the National Education Policy. If somebody would ask me that how are you going to prepare a roadmap for implementation of the National Education Policy at the Maharaja Sayajirao University of Baroda, then it is customary for the state government to constitute committee. It would be customary for the Minister of Education and the various verticals now that would come up to provide us input and guidance on the implementation of National Education Policy. But I believe if we really want to get fruits, if we really want to capitalize on the opportunity that the Maharaja Sayajirao University of Baroda has now after the implementation of the National Education Policy from 29th July, I would say let us take a different route. And then my first request is that whenever in the Faculty of Family and Community Science, you think through implementation of the National Education Policy, let us focus on two very important, powerful domains. Number one is that we would focus on family, and it's a science, Faculty of Family Science and Family Sciences and Community. I think we would adopt a very, very important strategic, scientific and systematic approach in the implementation of the National Education Policy. That is the first thing which I would request everybody to, explore the opportunities and the possibilities, and how can we convert these challenges into an opportunity. Let me go, little deeper into this. And Professor Anjali very correctly brought out the vision of the faculty. The vision reads that the faculty strives to create an equitable and gender-just society. Now, I believe when you look at that, when we want to create a gender-just society, I would request all my colleagues, all my students who are a part of these faculty, please look at all the opportunities that we are going to get into this area. How can we utilize the potential, the infrastructure, the knowledge base that we have created in the faculty? because our vision is we want to create an equitable and a gender just society. How can we do that? How can we integrate? Because ultimately, let us remember that we will have to ensure, it is our responsibility to ensure that how are we going to implement these national education policy to realize our vision and mission. That is how I look at it. It's very interesting. The Faculty of Family and Community Science, the responsibility, and it envisions that we would like to offer quality teaching through academic. We would enhance it with the quality research, and our focus would be on 3 segments: individuals, families, and communities. This is very, very interesting. So we want to touch the life of an individual. we want to improve and enhance the quality of life of families, people of India, and all others, and then communities. Now that is also very, very important. Now, what is the mission that the Faculty of Family and Community Sciences identified? We will have to sustain an environment of academic excellence. So it's very interesting that yes, our challenge before us is that we have to create, build, and sustain an environment of academic excellence and innovative research. So we would not do what everybody is doing. So I would say that for that, I'm going to even touch upon some of the important, relevant thirst areas that my colleagues have identified, and they have shared it with me through the Dean of Faculty of Family and Community Science. Innovative research, I think, what are the thirst areas, based on our capabilities and capacities and our past achievements, what are the, areas that we are going to further strengthen? What are the new emerging areas of research that we would identify? Because I hope you all will agree with me that National Research Foundation and Government of India has allocated 20,000 crore. Now, this is a big amount. And how Faculty of Family and Community Science can identify the areas in which we are going to undertake research through projects, through various innovative proposals, what role we would play in policy formulation, may be it in the local administration, be it in the state government departments, and be it in the central government. Now, this is I'm just trying to create a kind of an exploration. Another word which is very important for the faculty is, it talks about a mission is with a focus on indigenous perspective. We are not copycats. We are original. We are all having blessings of Sir Sayajiram Gaikwad. We have kindergarten. We have a WSRC. Right from the inception, we started talking about women's studies. Yes, this faculty has. We have a very innovative department of human development and family studies. Now that department, apart from academic curriculum design and development and research, how can these department, identify some of the, innovative areas of research? This is just an example, but I believe this is very important because we all talk about, happiness index. We all talk about human development, and I believe this policy talks about, sustaining and keeping a root with the Indian ethos. How can these department, which is very important to me, human development and family studies, we want to create professionals, and then we want to take out to our applications, which would be a part of the result and academic, exercises, the academic extensions that would carry out with, number 1, government, 2, industries, 3, voluntary organizations. And I'm very happy to share with you that Honorable Prime Minister said that this policy focuses on creating job makers and not job seekers. So the Faculty of Family and Community Science also emphasizes on creating professionals and nurturing entrepreneurship. Very interesting. The another one is the faculty, mission says that we would contribute to bring about a positive social change. What kind of social change what kind of positive social change that we want to bring about? I would now relate it with my Department of Food and Nutrition. I know some of my, senior professors, I know the participation in various activities when we talk about nutrition, food nutrition. When I say I'm deliberately using word nutrition, Because when you talk about nutrition, it's a whole gamut of canvas that you can create on nutrition. It's not just malnutrition. It's not just food nutrition. I would request all my researchers and all my colleagues of the department to think through, to explore what are the opportunities that you have in your own domain of food and nutrition. The similar is true for clothing and textile. So our challenge before us is to contribute to, we will have to make a contribution in bringing a positive social change, transfer of technical know-how. That's what I said. This faculty is unique. It is different than other faculties. Why? Because this faculty, I would congratulate the entire team of heads of the department, because it focuses on what? Training. This is very interesting. Look at the one of the mission of the faculty: contribute to positive social change through transfer of technical know-how in a very, very scientific way to academic research and training institutions. What kind of training, what kind of skill development that we will have to provide, not to our students, not to our researchers, but to other surrounding institutions, to see to it that we can bring about a positive social or societal change. Now, I thought this is an opportunity for me to share some of the ideas. And the objectives, it only enumerates the names of the department. I would relate it with some other areas. So what I would suggest that I would request the esteemed dean of the faculty to prepare the list of areas on which you're going to now put in efforts, be it academic, be it research, be it extension, be it infrastructure, and be it leadership. And these areas, maybe that you have provided me, I would like to reinforce to you. One is the health. Yes, I hope you would agree with me. Government of India has a very strategic emphasis on health. Government of India has a very strategic emphasis on food and nutrition. So health is one area. Wellness, I think the whole segment is coming up. Professor Anjali was talking about interdisciplinary and multidisciplinary area. I would say that, yeah, the policy talks about increasing and improving gross enrollment ratio. How can we change the perception among all stakeholders that Faculty of Family and Community Science is not a faculty which is meant for only girls or females? This is one challenge I would request. Let's think through. This is my request. Entrepreneurship is another area. How can you inculcate that? How can we promote that? The use of ICT applications, this is not just for faculty. It is true with all my faculties. How we would make strategic use of ICT applications in academic, research, extension, and other areas. Another area which I expect Faculty of Family Community Science has already identified, I would say that you can explore and work on it, is with the, what we call it, life skills. What role these faculty can play in developing the life skills. The another one word which I think touches to me when I look at your entire faculty, my greetings to entire team once again, and all those senior deans, all former deans. We have an Institute of Fashion Technology. Let us take pride for that. Fashion is a very, very important word. Two words which I would request all my colleagues: fashion and design. We are talking about design thinking. I believe, I hope you please relate the very basic rational philosophy of this national education policy, which emphasizes upon fashion. Which emphasizes upon design thinking. We have a basket of courses. I will not go into detail, but how can we exploit that? Energy management, time management, stress management, family management. I believe it's a housekeeping. Then we can talk environment. When I take environment, is not just green building or net zero building. No, but I think let's look at how Faculty of Family and Community Science is going to use these environment as one of the area. This is applicable to my other faculties also when we talk about the implementation of national education policy. See, जो बिकता है, जो दिखता है, वो बिकता है. How can we improve whatever that our students participate, put in their zeal, put in their efforts, and come out with projects? I am very happy to share with all the attendees. I think the faculty did one experiment, and what is that? Each year they identify a theme, and then they provide technical support. They provide some sort of financial support to my students to experiment their innovativeness, their design. Maybe just to say that how can they can create, build, and showcase and commercialize various kinds of product categories where they've been using waste. Now, this is something which I believe is the need of the hour. We need to take it, to the next level. Tourism is one area, I would say. The state of Gujarat has got a lot of opportunities. I hope you understand. This is one area which we have not identified. I expect faculty to explore. See, please do not, just think that implementation of national education policies to strengthen CBCS, to take CBCS to a postgraduate level, to develop academic bank of credit, to explore whether we would offer a 4-year program, 4+1, which is proposed. All that we are going to do, but then that everybody is going to do. How strategically we are going to do by fine-tuning it, by creating a sort of a wonderful alignment with the vision and mission of the faculty and the vision and mission of the Maharaja Sayajirao University of Baroda. I thought a wonderful morning, and all of you are together today for this webinar. The another area which I would suggest is gender. I would request, I would not elaborate on it, but then this is one area on which I would request that the entire team of the faculty should think through, sit together and decide. The other 3 areas on which you can explore is value education, vocational education, and education related to human rights. I want Faculty of Family and Community Science has got a wonderful, capability to, have a kind of an, collaboration with the Faculty of Social Work. They can have collaboration with the Faculty of Medicine and Faculty of Science and even Faculty of Technology. There are 4 faculties where I believe within the university, while implementing national education policy, how are we going to collaborate? Let's first collaborate, at least within the university, then identified. I think you have a very strong network of collaboration with the institutions, NGOs, Anganwadis, government departments. I can still talk extensively, but because we've got experts, I won't speak more. But the policy also talks about school education. I would request everybody, please do not conclude that school education, teacher education is only area which Professor R.C. Patel has to look at it. No, each and every faculty. Because I'll tell you, if you will not focus on school education, if you will not strengthen the foundation from where we get students, I believe we would not be able to do justice. So even while implementing the policy, how are we going to, create a strong network with the schools in Vadodara, in the other cities and other states from where we get students? I think that networking, not just to attract students, but to identify. Because when we get students from different states, each one of them, some of them have language problems, each one of them have their own, what we call strength and weaknesses. How are we going to fine tune? It is not just that you design and come out with a wonderful academic curriculum. The implementation is always a big challenge for all of us. And how do we envision these Faculty of Family and Community Science in 2025, 2030, 2035? Already, I hope, and I'm sure Honorable Dean must have talked about the 5-year action plan, which now it is mandatory for us to place it and share these data on the portal of the Government of Gujarat, because Honorable CM is also monitoring. So I thought, let me just raise some of the issues rather than relating it directly with the features of national education policy. Now we are in the implementation part. First of all, we have to look at our own domain. We have to undertake our own SWOT. We have to look at where we want to reach out in another 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years down the line. And then we, as a team, sit together, think through and focus on academic research, extension, governance, infrastructure, and leadership. And how can we strive not just academic excellence, but excellence in each of these areas. And I think then I believe we would be doing justice to the generation which is with us and the generation that would follow in time to come for realizing their dream and passion, to the Maharaja Sayajirao University of Baroda. I think this is how I look at implementation, strategic implementation of the national education policy, especially with the Faculty of Family and Community Science. My greetings and my compliments to the entire team of Faculty of Family and Community Science, and I believe and I request that we have a lot of expectations from you. Entire university is with you, and let's do everything to see to it that we can make value-driven offerings to the students, above all, in near future. And I think we realize the vision and mission of the Faculty of Family and Community Science, and also that of the Maharaja Sayajirao University of Baroda. With these words, once again, I express, my pleasure for organizing this webinar, and I am very happy because both the speakers, I would, convey my sense of appreciation and thanks to Professor Namita, where you again fine-tuned the schedule because we wanted to have it on 22nd, but then there were certain, interruptions. I'm very happy. Honorable Vice Chancellor was having certain constraint, but both the panel members, as they agreed, instead of 22nd, now we could meet and we are going to get valuable input from you. So we welcome both of you and look forward for your support to faculty and university in near future. Thank you. Thank you very much. Over to you, Dr. Chakravarti.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for your kind words and putting the issue in perspective. Over to Shonima, please.
Thank you, sir. Honorable Vice Chancellor, Professor Parimal Vyas, sir, we are honored to have had your august presence on this occasion. Sir, you brought to our notice the very crux of this revolutionary policy and how our faculty of family and community sciences can align its vision and mission with the national education policy and the role that we have to play in implementation of this policy. So we are so grateful to you for having consented to help us understand this national education policy minutely. And we are sure that when this document is implemented in letter and spirit, it will transform the way in which education is transacted in our higher education institutions. Thank you so much, sir. May I now request Professor Anjali Karolia, Dean, Faculty of Family and Community Sciences, to introduce our first keynote speaker, Dr. Premavati Vijayan.
Thank you, Shonima. It gives me immense pleasure to introduce our first expert speaker, Professor Premavati Vijayan, Honorable Vice Chancellor of Avinash Lingam Institute of Home Science and Higher Education for Women, Coimbatore. She's been the former head, Department of Special Education. She's been the former Dean, Faculty of Education, and one of the pioneers in the country who implemented inclusive education in India. A fellow member of the Commonwealth British Council, also the director of the prestigious Indo-US research project under Obama Singh Knowledge Initiative granted by the UGC, New Delhi. She took charge of this prestigious university in 2016, and one honor that she has to her credit was that under her guidance, this university had the honor of being re-accredited with a A+ grade by NAC. So I think we don't have a better person to guide us. She's also authored 9 books and edited 3 books in special education published by IGNOU. She received the National Award by the President of India for her outstanding services for the empowerment of persons with disabilities in 2010, and also received the Best Teacher, Special Teacher Award by Christopher Blyden Mission in appreciation of the pioneering and dedicated services rendered to the cause of integrated education of visually handicapped in 1993. Ma'am, we look forward to hearing your comments, and especially thank you once again for accepting our invitation. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you, Dr. Anjali Karolia, for presenting on our contributions towards persons with disabilities as a whole, and particularly home science education. Thank you. Honorable Vice Chancellor of MS University of Baroda, Professor Parimal H. Vyas, Professor Namita Ranganathan, Department of Education, Central Institute of Education, Delhi University, who is going to address following me. Professor Anjali Karolia, Dean Faculty of Family and Community Science, Director IQAC, Dr. B.S. Chakrabarti, our Registrar, Dr. Kausalya, Deans of various schools, Director, School of Engineering, Self-Finance Programs, all faculty members, scholars of both university and other well-wishers and viewers, very good morning to all. Namaskar, Vanakkam. Honorable Vice Chancellor stated that the Faculty of Community, Family and Community Science, through quality education, ICT facility and research with the great thrust areas based on the vision and mission of MS University, prepare individuals, families and communities to meet the challenges of life. Sir, really I agree with you. So our mission is we have to prepare the individuals, either gender, and empower them, and through education their families and communities are meeting their needs. Sir, you have raised a lot of issues and recognized the Faculty of Family and Community Sciences. It definitely motivated them all to prepare for the challenges, for the current needs and future too, sir. Thank you. I am really honored and extend my gratitude to Honorable Vice Chancellor of MS University, Dr. Anjali Karolia, Director IQAC, for inviting me to discuss on the theme National Education Policy 2020, focusing on structural and curricular reforms in higher education. I'm happy to share that our Avinash Lingam Institute for Home Science and Higher Education for Women and MS University are pioneers of home science education in India, and the world-renowned nutritionist Dr. Rajamal P. Devadas, whom we affectionately call her as Amma, Madam Dr. Mrinalini Devi, for both leaders were chancellors and guided all of us. They were also close friends and associates. Our Amma served as Dean of Home Science in the earlier days at MS University, Baroda. Dr. Mrinalini Devi was the first women chancellor of an Indian reputed university. I am happy to recall the prestigious moments of receiving Dr. Mrinalini Devi Memorial Lecture at the annual conference of Home Science Association of India in December 2018. Recently, when Home Science Association of India conference was held at our institute in December 2019, Honorable Dr. Bhushan Patwardhan, Vice Chairman, UGC, gave the responsibility of preparing BSc Home Science Honors LOCF curriculum to Dr. S. Kausalya, our registrar, and Dr. Anjali Karolia, and they have done this work excellently, co-opting members from both institutes. Debate is going on all over India, and the coordination of MHRD, UGC, AICT, AU, and other government organizations, universities, colleges, private institutions, organized a lot of national, international webinars. Yes, our director, IQAC stated, the national webinar started in the August month, and now this is the last webinar today. First of all, we thank Dr. Kasturi Rangan and his team for bringing such a debatable, challenging National Education Policy 2020, which promote revamping childhood education to higher education in India. We are all looking forward for the final guidelines from MHRD, UGC towards strategic implementation of national education policy at all levels. Coming to the theme, an introduction, early childhood. Slide. Early childhood to semi-adult stage is the founding pillar of holistic child development. With the increasing need for creative, multidisciplinary, and skilled workforce for employment, Indian higher education system needs to be revamped to meet the emerging requirements. Key reforms are introduced in National Education Policy 2020 in the Indian higher education system, and the reforms are discussed under various heads. First, quality universities and challenges. Problems currently prevailing in the higher education system in India: poor employability of educated workforce, severely fragmented higher educational ecosystem, poor learning outcome and development of cognitive skills of students, rigid separation of disciplines with too much early specialization and streaming of students into narrow areas. National Education Policy 2020 focuses quality higher education, enabling personal accomplishment, constructive public engagement, and productive contribution to society. NEP 2020 aims to prepare students for more meaningful and satisfying lives and work roles and enable economic independence. Second, institutional restructuring and consolidation. NEP 2020 intends to end the fragmentation of higher education by transforming education institutions into large multidisciplinary universities and colleges. Fragmentation of higher education system. The reason for this fragmentation is identified as the presence of over 800 universities and 40 colleges spread across the country. In effect, the socio-cultural diversity, decentralized autonomy of the universities, and the reach and scope of affiliated colleges that have been catering to the needs of students in urban and rural areas are neglected in a single stroke with a label of fragmentation. The new policy proposes to overcome this through the establishment of higher educational institutions of a much broader scope and size, which indicates a move towards a monolithic and homogenized educational regime. The higher education system is thus aimed to have multidisciplinary institutions of learning that graduate programs with high quality teaching, research, and community engagement. The area includes moving towards multidisciplinary universities and colleges. The national education policy suggests creating model public universities for holistic and multidisciplinary education at par with Indian Institutes of Technology, IITs, and Indian Institute of Management, that is IIMs, called multidisciplinary education and research universities, or MERUs. These institutions will aim at to attain the highest global standards in quality education. Existing institutions will focus on research and innovation by setting up startup incubation centers and similar centers and focus on interdisciplinary research, including in the humanities and social sciences research. The policy mentions that even leading engineering institutions such as the IITs will move towards multidisciplinary education with more arts and humanities. In holistic and multidisciplinary education, flexibility subjects like multiple entry exit, UG program 3 or 4 years, PG program 1 or 2 years, integrated 5-year bachelor's, master's, MPhil to be discontinued. The policy envisages broad-based multidisciplinary holistic undergraduate education with flexible curricula, creative combination of subjects, integration of vocational education and multiple entry and exit points with appropriate certification. UG education can be of 3 or 4 years with multiple exit options and appropriate certification within this period. For example, certificate after 1 year, advanced diploma after 2 years, bachelor's degree after 3 years, and bachelor's with research after 4 years. Moving towards faculty and institutional autonomy, revamping curriculum pedagogy, assessment, and student support for enhanced experiences. Curriculum and pedagogy to the transferred by 2020 by transforming skill-based and minimize rote learning. Curriculum in all subjects to be reduced to its core essentials, focus on critical thinking, interactive teaching with less dependency on textbook learning and experiential learning, that is creative, collaborative and exploratory activities. Accordingly, curriculum and pedagogy will be designed by institutions and motivated faculty to ensure a stimulating and engaging learning experience for all students, and continuous formative assessment will be used to further the goals of each program. Faculty will be given the freedom to design their own curricula and pedagogical approaches within the approved framework, including textbook and reading materials, elections, assignments, and assessments. Credit transfer and academic bank of credits is to be established for digitally strong academic credits earned from different higher education institutions so that these can be transferred and counted towards final degree earned. Multidisciplinary education and research universities, MERUs, at par with IITs, IIMs, to be set up as models of best multidisciplinary education of global standards in the country. 50% gross enrollment ratio by 2035, the National Research Foundation, the shift towards holistic education with less rote learning. National Education Policy 2020 advocates for promotion of holistic arts education to ensure all-round development of students, particularly physical and gross motor, fine motor, emotional development, sensory development, cognitive, language, social, spiritual, and self-help through thematic-based, project-based approaches. Pedagogy for these courses will strive for significantly less rote learning. As mentioned earlier, departments in languages, literature, music, philosophy, Indology, art, dance, theatre education, mathematics, statistics, pure and applied sciences, sociology, economics, sports, and other such subjects needed for a multidisciplinary and the environment will be established. Students will also be provided with opportunities for internships with local industry to improve their employability options. Internalization. National Education Policy 2020 aims for the world's top-rated universities to come to India and top Indian institutions to be encouraged to set up campuses in other countries. With more than 750 lakh Indian students, 750,000 Indian students studying abroad, the ministry is looking to boost India's image as an education hub in India. The government is also promoting a very strong stay in India and study in India program. The policy also explained that research collaboration and student exchanges between Indian and global institutions will be promoted. Further, credits acquired in foreign universities will also be permitted to be counted for award of the degree. It is thus intended that high-performing Indian institutions will be encouraged. Additionally, research collaboration and students exchange programs between Indian institutions and global institutions will be promoted. Reform in teacher education to reach the levels of integrity and creditability to restore the prestige of teaching profession, the regulatory system empowered to phase out and dysfunctional education institutions that do not meet basic educational criteria. The teacher education needs to be conducted within composite multidisciplinary institutions having departments of psychology, philosophy, sociology, neurosciences, Indian languages, arts, history and literature, as well as various other specialized subjects such as science, mathematics, etc. By 2020-30, the 4-year integrated B.Ed offered by multidisciplinary higher education institutions is proposed to be made as a minimal degree qualification for school teachers. The said 4-year integrated B.Ed will be a dual major holistic bachelor's degree in education as well as specialized subjects. For the purpose of maintaining uniform acceptable standards of education, the admission to pre-service teacher programs shall be through a single nationwide entrance examinations. Professional education and all existing standalone professional education institutions will have to become multidisciplinary institutions by 2030, either by opening new departments or by operating in clusters. Promoting high quality research. National Education Policy 2020 focuses on a comprehensive approach for transforming the quality and quantity of research in India. National Education Policy 2020 provides for setting up of a National Research Foundation, NRF, which would bring a quantum jump in funding and support for research. Transforming regulatory system of higher education. Higher Education Commission of India, that is HCCI, will be set up as a single overarching umbrella body for entire higher education, excluding medical and legal education, higher education council, Commission of India to have 4 independent verticals, National Higher Education Regulatory Council for regulation, General Education Council for standard setting, Higher Education Grants Council for funding, and National Accreditation Council, NAC, for accreditation. Public and private higher education institutions will be governed by the same. Set of norms for regulation, accreditation, and academic standards. Affiliation of colleges is to be phased out in 15 years, and a stage-wise mechanism is to be established for granting graded economy to colleges. Over a period of times, it is envisaged that every college would develop into either an autonomous degree granting college or a continuant college, constituent college of the university. My comments on reforms in the Indian higher education system were also long overdue. National Education Policy 2020 marks a significant shift in the long-standing and established rote and third learning education practice followed in India. The main focus of National Education Policy 2020 is not only on improving the quality of education, but NEP 2020 also focuses on formulating an effective regulatory regime for higher education institutions across India. Thus, while the introduction of NEP 2020 and the proposed reforms in the regulatory regime for higher education institution is a positive step for revamping and streamlining the higher education segment within India, the actual results and challenge will depend on ground level implementation of the proposed reforms. Though I have spoken in general about national education policy at higher education level, home science education is unique and offers skill-based training in all disciplines. Home science education prepares the students to become entrepreneurs and offer jobs to others. I appeal to you all to take forward home science education in India. Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am. We are grateful to you for having thrown light on the pillars of the National Education Policy 2020. Thank you, ma'am, for having elaborated on the conceptual structure of the National Education Policy that would effectively scaffold facilitation of education. It has been a very enlightening session, ma'am. Thank you so much once again. I now request Dr. Varsha Parikh, faculty co-convener, to introduce our next keynote speaker, Professor Namita Ranganathan.
Thank you, Dr. Shonima. Thank you so much, Honorable Vice Chancellor Madam, for an engaging and enlightening session on today's topic. We certainly have taken insights from your session. Moving ahead with the program, today we have amongst us Professor Namita Ranganathan to share her pulse of immense knowledge and her expertise. I am delighted and honored to introduce and welcome Professor Namita Ranganathan, who is former head and dean education and currently a professor at University of Delhi. Sharing her brief profile, she has 34 years of teaching and research experience. Under her guidance, 25 MPhil and 30 PhD students have been awarded degree. Her areas of specialization include foundation of education, human development, childhood and adolescent studies, education for mental health, guidance and counseling, gender studies and research methods. She has extensively worked with United Nations agencies, Aga Khan Foundation, Care India, MHRD, that is Ministry of Human Resource Development, and Society for All-Round Development in the areas of girls' education, life skills education, quality enhancement in schools and residential schooling, and others. She is also an active member in Board of Studies and academic resource groups of NCERT, NIEPA, IGNOU, Guru Gobind Singh Indraprasth University, Central University of Pondicherry, Central University of Kashmir, International Hindi University Wardha, and Dalbagh, Agra. Professor Ranganathan has participated in and presented papers at numerous conferences, workshops, seminars, and author of the several books on education, teaching psychology, guidance and counseling for children, and understanding childhood and adolescence to her credit. With this brief note, I would like to invite her for her presentation. Today, she is going to share her views with us on National Education Policy 2020 Implementation Strategies for Higher Education. Thank you, Madam, for accepting our invitation. It's a delight to have you amongst us today. And now I request you to give your presentation. Over to you, Madam.
Thank you very much, Dr. Varsha, and thank you, Professor Anjali. We've been in steady dialogue. I'm very happy to be here on this forum, sitting here in front of you with the opportunity to share my views and ideas. It's a bit difficult to speak after two Vice Chancellors. Professor Parimal Vyas, salutations to you and for setting the agenda and the perspective on what your very illustrious Department of Family and Community Studies can do and how they can contribute. And you're absolutely right. When I grew up, we were always told Baroda is the best place to go and study home science. And we, in any case, in the Department of Education have our networks with the child development people. I can see Dr. Shagufa Kapadia was also online. She's often come as an examiner, etc. So I'm very happy about that. And of course, Professor Premavati Vijayan, salutations to you, because, it's so good to know that somebody is so passionate about persons with disability and about inclusivity. And, all the credit which goes to you for making this part of the national agenda and national platform is something we all celebrate and talk about. And Avinash Lingam is a unique place, because it's one of its kind. We do have other all-women's universities, but it's indeed a very, very unique space. Having said that, I think, Anjali, probably so that there's enough discussion time, you might want me to compress to 20 minutes. Am I right? Yeah, I'll compress. I have no problems at all because, my work and my task.
Take your time. We would love to listen to anything.
My task has been made easier by Professor Vyas's, perspective building exercise initially. And Professor Vijayan has already given us the wider canvas. So I don't have to go into the reforms at all. Now, one thing which disturbs me or which makes me feel a little disconcerted is that we should not only eulogize policies. Policies, let us remember, I'm going to play the devil's advocate because I think somebody should do the problem posing and the question posing as well. So since we've already got a very wide, rosy picture, let me also sound some thorns. Because, when you think of a rose, its entity is not complete without the thorns. And collectively, the roses and the thorns become compatible. And then we have a beautiful rose bush or a rose plant. So I'm going to sound some of those issues for us to reflect upon. To begin with, what I want to say is that, a policy and what we have received now, the 66-page document that we have received, which is divided into multiple sections, is actually a framework or it's a utopian vision about what the government would like to do for transforming and radicalizing education in this country. So let us look at it as a vision document. Nowhere does it say that these are the prescriptions or the standards which you have to follow. Anjali has already highlighted that flexibility is one of the key words, and the freedom to adapt, to adopt, to construct, to build those are the other implicit good aspects about this policy. And that is there. So, if we start with micro level planning already without knowing what the macro picture is going to be, I don't think it will be a very wise supposition. Of course, as a department, we can sit down and, think that, in this larger framework, what can my contributions be? And for that, I think Professor Vyas gave us a very, very good spectrum of issues which your department can address. But I am saying something different. I happened to attend two very interesting webinars. They were the E-Express Addas. One was where the minister himself was questioned. Some of you may have also attended it. So Dr. Ramesh Pokhriyal himself was actually the key speaker there. And there were questions posed to him about the implementation plan and about what rationale went into different facets of the policy. And I attended that. And I felt very privileged because I got a much wider sense of understanding after attending that. And soon after that, Mr. Amit Khare, who's the Secretary of Higher Education, he also went to the E-Adda of the Indian Express Group. And many, many questions, very candid questions were posed to him, and he gave us a very interesting response structure. What I got from both of them was chiefly that, the implementation plan is still to roll out, and they're looking at the implementation plan in a phased out manner. So it's important for us not to plan for 2040. They have kept 2040 as the ultimate date by which they want to roll out completely whatever they can roll out. History has shown us, let us not forget, when the Kothari Commission or the first Education Commission gave us the first policy in 1968, and when we got the program of action based on the 1986 policy from the Ramamurthy Committee, everything did not roll out. A lot of issues rolled out, but it's not possible for everything to translate into action. So whatever is doable, whatever is feasible, whatever is acceptable to the community of learners, the community of consumers, and the community of givers. When I say the community of givers, it's all of us who are, teachers in higher education. Only that will get rolled out. And that's the kind of sense that I got both from the minister and from the Secretary Higher Education. It was not taken as an imperative. So I think that is the first note of caution that I want to sound. But let us be a little critical. Let us look at existing systems. Let us look at what we do well, what we don't do well. Let us look at what we want to change and reform. And, once we do this internal inner reflective exercise, which your Vice Chancellor also highlighted, we can then move a step ahead and somewhere interpolate and extrapolate with the policy and whatever its contributions are or whatever its suggested framework is. Now, let me come point by point to some of the issues. This multiple entry and exit and this 4-year undergraduate program. This is not the first time that this has come into the agenda. I represent Delhi University. Everybody knows, because it made national news, that the FYUP was actually launched and implemented in Delhi University, which is a huge university. We have 137 colleges. We have 102 departments. It's absolutely massive, with professional sectors, with liberal arts, with basic sciences, with all kinds of applied facets as well. And we were asked to roll out the FYUP program. And UGC at that point of time gave us 6 months to do it. So the then Vice Chancellor got a team together. They hurriedly put their heads together. They constructed, the curriculum accordingly. They semesterized systems. They made baskets. They made choice-based courses so that children could, students could put academic courses with cafeteria courses and with discipline-centric courses together and create baskets of specialization. 3 years down the line, somewhere it was felt that the experiment was not very successful. Why did we feel the experiment was not very successful? Because there were many, many issues. There were a lot of poor students who could not afford 4 years of education. There were a lot of people who had come to take a degree for purposes of certification, not for purposes of learning, and that will continue. And then if you, gave multiple exits and entries, which Delhi University didn't give at that point of time, it said you could exit only after third year with an ordinary BA or a BSc or a BCom degree, or you could exit with an honors specialization if you did a whole 4-year education. But we never reached stage 4-year because it was rolled back, and I don't want to go into the politics of why it was rolled back. That is something. So what I want to tell you is, when you say that there will be certification at the end of first year, there will be a diploma at the end of second year, there will be a degree at the end of third year, and at the end of fourth year, you will be privileged to either have an honors specialization or a major, or you will be that which can switch to a master's program. There's some disturbance in the background, please. Yeah. So what are you doing? Let's think about it. You are creating an uneven playing field. The idea of a university is to create a level playing field. So when people enter to do a certificate, they will come only with some intent. When people enter to do a diploma, they will come with another intent. So, you will have a cross section of people with different kinds of motivation, with different kinds of aspiration structures. So it's something you have to think through, because the university should then not become a classification space that, oh, these are the certificate people, these are the diploma people. And, this enters faculty minds, this enters course structuring, etc. The other challenge which I would urge all of you to think about is that, certificate courses should be complete in themselves. If I exit in 1 year with a certificate, my certificate should be encashable with some instrumental value in accessing a job or becoming an entrepreneur or whatever I want to become. It should not be just a perfunctory certificate which I hang in my study or in my bedroom. That is a very, very big challenge. When we say diploma, diplomas have implicit in them the notion that a diploma will be encashable in terms of employment or entrepreneurship, whatever we wish to look at. So making of courses, structuring of courses, and ensuring that there is quality, there is parity of standards, and there is an organic continuity from first year to fourth year, that is something which will also have to be retained and maintained. You see, I want you to also link this to the advent and the invitation which is going, as the minister said, to 100 top class foreign universities. So when the 100 top class foreign universities, some have been sent letters already, and 10 of them have already expressed their intent and willingness to come into our campuses or to set up a campus of their own. So they're coming in a twinning model, they're coming in a scaffold model, and they're also going to come as independent university campus spaces. This is what we are told in the rollout plan. Let us not get led or swept away by that, because our public funded universities, MS University is one, Delhi University is another, and among the state universities, MS University, Mysore University, Punjab University, Jadavpur University, they are leading lights, and they have a very illustrious record, and they continue to be front runners in as far as state universities go. And I'm very proud to say that Delhi University is a front runner in the whole system of the central universities as well. So, our experiences are not to be discounted. And our public funded universities should not get impoverished just because we are training students in our 4-year program to quickly jump into positions based on affordability into foreign universities. We don't want our indigenous, our state universities, our own public funded central universities to not have high quality, good students for masters and research courses. Because a university is not limited to undergraduate education. That is, of course, a very important component, but that's not the only component. The contribution of a university, as Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru said, is to actually liberate ideas, okay, to also give ideas. So ideation, and conversion of ideation into science, into technology, into liberal arts, into economy, into polity, etc. And JNU is a very standard and good case in point in this stead. Why I'm giving the example of JNU is I've studied in JNU, so I know it inside out. JNU over the years, I'm not looking at the last 3 years where there have been disturbances, but let us look at the contributions of JNU and learn some lessons from that. The best politicians, the best bureaucrats, the best academics, the best journalists, the best NGO and development sector personnel have come out of JNU. What else do you want from a university? You want that contribution to public service and to all walks of life must come in from the university space. So let us never fail to recognize that the university is a liberal ideational space. And let us not lose the vicissitudes of that ability to ideate which our students have and which our teachers have. So my worry is that certificates and diplomas might undervalue that and diminish that to some extent. My worry also is, I'm sounding my worries, it's for all of you to take them or reject them or to reflect on them. My worry is also that when the foreign universities come in whole hog, they should not pull out our best students and then do a kind of brain drain in a disguised fashion. We are trying to reverse the brain drain. The minister said, rather than all our money going outside, it's better that the money comes in and stays with our economy. But will our students who study in those foreign universities actually stay with us? Will they be committed to public service, or are they going to have aspirations of a different kind? Is something which public funded universities will need to address. So this is one note of caution which I wanted to sound. Now, at present, Ambedkar University of Delhi, which is a young university, it's now been in operation for the last 12 years. It runs a 4-year undergraduate program. And Professor Shyam Menon, an illustrious alumni from MS University, Baroda, was its founder, vice chancellor. And talk to Professor Menon, he tells you that the 4-year program is working, and he tells you in what ways it is working. So it's important for us to also learn lessons from universities who have introduced the system and who are doing the job well. So it's not only about lessons learned from past practice, it's also lessons learned from existing practice. I think that's very important, and the vice chancellors will appreciate what I'm trying to say. Likewise, because the policy document gives equal emphasis to private universities and to public funded universities, it's important for us to look at the leading private universities today. So if we look at in terms of where are students going, we can look at Azim Premji University in Bangalore. We can also look at Christ University, because they are two private universities which are vast. They have a spectrum of subjects, and there are a lot of students going to do liberal courses there, to do professional courses there. We can learn from them. And Azim Premji University is also running a 4-year bachelor's program. Likewise, there is Ashoka University in the outskirts of Delhi, which is a liberal arts university. And there is Jindal University, OP Jindal University, which has very, very good integrated 4-year programs. It's important for us to learn how they are functioning, with what is the client group they are catering to, what does it take to get people to do a 4-year program, and what is the product who comes out of a 4-year program. How is she or he empowered, okay, or how is he or she launched into this world of dreams, fantasies, utopias, etc., which he or she entered the university with. Do they get jobs? Do they continue in higher education? Do they go abroad? These are, I think, very, very important questions which we have to know and we have to factor in when, as a university, whether it's Avinash Lingam or whether it's MS University Baroda, the vice chancellors will have to actually finally have a rollout program with inputs from all. So this is something which I want all of us to think about very, very importantly. Now, I have a problem with this academic credit bank. So as an independent idea, it's very, very attractive. You know that in an iCloud system, The credits which I build up in my university education will get stored and I can encash those credits. It's almost like a credit card where you get bonus points and you can buy some gift on the basis of those bonus points. And it's some sort of a neoliberal phenomenon. I see it as that, to market and to sell some of our products, our courses, and our university systems. Tell me, this academic credit bank, which will always have your credits, will allow you to discontinue and to come back. And that's what the minister said, कि जब मन करेगा बच्चे वापस आ सकते हैं, पढ़ सकते हैं, they can deregister, they can re-register, they can come back. How are universities going to deal with disparate levels? Tell me. Somebody who discontinued for 4 years and is now coming back to my program of study, my syllabus doesn't remain the same, my curricular experiences keep on changing, my structuring of my courses changes, my transaction and pedagogic processes change. So how is that ex-person going to make the transition and come back and actually profit from what I'm doing? So there are many, many practical issues which we have to think about. Now, one good thing about the flexibility which Professor Vijayan highlighted was that, after this 4-year program, students can be asked to do a 1-year master's program, which is at par with what they do in England, in fact, all over Great Britain. And those who do a 3-year program can also be asked to do a 2-year master's course. So you will have several programs running parallelly. So it's important for us to think about how we can dovetail all these programs. Faculty time, course structures, etc. can also have some commonalities. So, looking at 1 year as distinct and 2 years as distinct with no dovetailing should not be at the helm of our consideration. We should try to see what from the 2-year program can also become part of a composite 1-year program. And ultimately, students do masters for 2 reasons. One is hugely that they want to go into doctoral programs and they want to contribute to research and development, whether it's the sciences, whether it's the social sciences, whether it's humanities, whatever be the discipline. The other is that with a master's, they have a certain maturity to now make choices about how they want to decide their future trajectory, even in the world of work or in the world of entrepreneurship. And we have illustrious and countless examples by which we can go to guide us on this issue. So it is important for us, therefore, to see this as an area of immense potential. Having 1-year programs, having 2-year programs, having multiple tracks to achieve the master's after the bachelor's is very, very welcome in terms of how a university can locate itself. When I was in dialogue with Anjali, she raised a question to me. And she said, how will this unfold? And she was thinking of her own department. My appeal to all of us is, and I'm a psychologist, so pardon me for making this appeal. My appeal to all of us is that, if we try to look at the new education policy in terms of what we have been doing and try to see where we can locate the gaps of what we have been doing and plug them with inputs from the new education policy, we will have a lot of difficulties. A lot of us tried this when we went to the 2-year B.Ed program and 2-year M.Ed program, and I'm sure your education faculty is here. We had this huge problem that, if we tried to actually fit in what we were doing in the 1-year B.Ed program with the proposed changes which the Burma committee made and which NCT gave us as a framework in the 2-year program, we found we couldn't do any goodness of it. And we ended up having all sorts of problems and difficulties. So it's best to start afresh. It is best to start the envisioning process with a new set of objectives or guidelines. And we can certainly draw from past experience and then retain within those new objectives what we are doing well. So this is my appeal to you, and this is how we have been doing it. And I'm speaking, I was the dean of my department at that time when the rollout actually happened and the first batch got churned out. So, you can see the product only when the batch is actually completed, and they've been through a cycle process of 2 years. And so this is also based on some facts and some follow-up. So this is something I wanted to say. I also want to talk about 2 other things. Anjali, will you give me 5 minutes more? Okay. So I want to talk about 2 other important things. I think multidisciplinary has appeared 68 times. I did a numeric contents analysis of the policy document. In 66 pages, it has appeared more than 60 times. Multidisciplinary. And somewhere, cross-disciplinary and interdisciplinary has also appeared. Now, this multidisciplinary, cross-disciplinary, interdisciplinary, these are all semantics. They are ideas, and they are very, very lofty ideas. But somewhere in the policy, you tend to think that it's a play of semantics. I asked one vice chancellor, what does multidisciplinary mean? What will it mean? Will it mean that people in Anjali's department can actually go to other departments to do courses? Is Anjali going to make networks, as Professor Vyas suggested, that, the networks can be made with 3 other faculties? And is the degree therefore going to be a composite of a contribution of all of them? Are they going to teach some courses also? Are they going to be on the same configuration? Or is it just going to be that I do some cherry picking, that I want to do 1 course in chemistry, I want to do 1 course in technology, I want to do 1 course in music, and major number of courses from the department which Anjali heads right now? Is it going to be that? So, we've got to think this through. Multidisciplinary can mean many things. It simply means that you should have many disciplines coexisting in one campus space, and that should be a robust campus. So, what does this word robust mean in terms of academic implications? We have to deconstruct. Till now, we were all focusing on interdisciplinary, and we were making sure, in my discipline of education, we were ensuring that there is contribution, and not at a perfunctory level, but at a very deep level of philosophy, of sociology, of history, of psychology, of economics, of the polity, of legal studies, of gender studies. We were trying to interpolate and trying to make courses which were truly interdisciplinary and which were not myopic or limited to discourse only belonging to the field of teacher education. And I thought we were quite successful. Our canvas of readings was vast, the inputs were vast, and our teachers also came from different training backgrounds. And so they gave, based on their areas of specialization, very good inputs to the program. So I don't think we should replace interdisciplinary with multidisciplinary. That's the point I'm trying to make. Similarly, cross-disciplinary, when I studied in JNU and I did my master's from 1978 to 1980. So when I did my master's in JNU, at that time, we had the flexibility and the freedom. I was studying in educational studies. I was doing my MPhil PhD program. I took a course in the sociology department. I took a course in the geography department, and I took a course in law. And I made my own basket as far back as then. And that I found was a cross-disciplinary perspective. So, let us not lose the threads of what has worked well and replace this with new jargon, naam ke vaste. That's the issue which I'm trying to flag. So this is one thing. Another thing which really bothers me is the National Research Foundation. On the one hand, it gladdens my heart because the resource allocation is huge. And, they want colleges to come up with robust research proposals. They want all universities to do this. But when you have a central advisory council or you have a central foundation which will then dispense or distribute the privileges and the grants in aid, there may be some trouble. After all, let us not forget that the state universities are also doing excellent research. They are contributing in meaningful ways, whether it's through patent development, whether it's through actual researchers in the social sciences and allied fields. They're adding to academic discourse. And, it comes across in conferences, in webinars, and there is a sharing. There is a peer sharing, there's an international sharing, and we all have a position. Suppose this NRF starts giving us the agenda of what are the research priority areas. Suppose we are compelled to play around only those areas. Those can be limiting factors. So it's important for us to look at NRF or give our ideas at least for what should constitute the NRF yet. They just have some broad vision. They don't have the narrow specific objectives yet. So I think we can play a huge role in deciding that. Education is in the concurrent list. So the state has a huge stake in education. And the states were not consulted before the policy was passed, because it was a 66-page draft was introduced in the parliament and it was passed. There were no deliberations.
Okay.
So I don't think the states have had time to engage with this policy. Apart that should be done now during the rollout plan and the action plans developed. That's one thing I wanted to sound. And the last point which I will make is this Higher Education Commission with 4 verticals. So we are now separating regulation and monitoring. We are separating financing. We are separating curriculum development and course development. And we are separating accreditation. Okay. So we have 4 different verticals. Each is going to work as an independent entity. And UGC, NCT and such bodies are going to actually lose their hold on standards of regulation, monitoring and quality control. They are only going to be limited to program development and structure, which is good on the one hand, but I don't think they can go independently. No program can be imagined without what the finances will be, without what the monitoring structure will be. So I'm wondering if these verticals will actually have a cross collaboration and how this is going to impact our strategy management or our development of courses, programs of study and curricula specifically. I'm a little disconcerted by this. They've allowed the Bar Council to continue and the Medical Council to continue because they can't play with these two. But you know, for all other practical purposes, AICTE has been disbanded. Our regulator, my regulator is NCT, that has also been disbanded. So now I don't know how this is going to work out for me. So that is also something which I really, really wanted to sound. You know, I can go on, but I think we should have discussion time. So I end here by saying that, you know, micro level planning and macro level planning must go in tandem with each other. They should go hand in glove. We have to dovetail them. So while Anjali plans for her department, certainly she should, but it has to fit into the rubric of MS University Baroda in general. So I think we can do 2 levels of exercises on the rollout plan, and that's the strategy I'm suggesting. Each department to do its inner reflection and build up a vision and actionable vision plan. Not just vision, but an actionable vision plan drawn from the broad framework of the policy. And of course, the vice chancellors and deans, etc., will have to do another kind of vision building plan and a rollout plan, which takes into cognizance the whole policy and its imperatives. But let's wait for the Sarkar to tell us what has to be the actionable rollout plan and what the time deadlines will be. There's plenty of time. Amit said that we can wait till 2040. 2030 is the first landmark time. And the quick rollout is only of some curricular revision, etc., and maybe the FYUP program in some universities. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Professor Namita Ranganathan. Ma'am, we learned about several relevant aspects of this path-breaking document. And, you know, ma'am has picked up crucial aspects related to university education and comprehensively explained how it will impact the system as a whole. We express our heartfelt thanks to ma'am, Professor Namita Ranganathan, for having elucidated points of interest and concern to all of us associated with India's higher education system. Thank you so much, ma'am. Next up, we have the question and answer session. So, with your permission, could we start with the question and answer session and the discussion? I request our honorable panelists to put forth their valuable comments on these talks, and your comments will add more value and direction to this already electrifying discussion.
I think, Shonima, you could take the first question that you.
Yes, ma'am. We have one of the questions is from Dr. Rachna Bhangankar. She's asking, she wants to know that since the launch of the NEP, we have been thinking about the academic implications. What preparations will universities and departments need to make administratively to support the academic changes? And these challenges will affect both students and teachers.
Yeah, so I think this question should be taken by Professor Vijayan, who's a Vice Chancellor, because they're asking about the administrative part. Professor Vijayan, I would request you as a panelist to respond to this, please.
Definitely, because the DVS, Namita Madam was elaborately explaining about what to be done, what is a challenge in front of us, particularly teacher education program. Now 2 years program is going on B.Ed M.Ed, and 4-year integrated program will also be emerging. Already, I think 3 decades back, Mysore, I think university has started, and it was continuing for I think 1 decade. Then later it was dropped, but now it is again putting up. And for the preparation of the institute or the faculty or the department, so we have to wait for the MHRD UGC, the guidance. Already we have existing facilities which will be helping us running the programs, present programs very effectively. In addition to that, as we all know now, virtual learning programs, so ICT should be very strong. And also teachers should be given orientation, and also the standardized curriculum. Namita Madam was telling about standardized, that is curriculum, common curriculum, so that any student who would like to transfer from one university to another university. So all universities should have a common curriculum. But the preparation we can't decide now, but let us wait from the higher government organization like MHRD, UGC, and the directives, and let us prepare ourselves that we need to accept. We can't deny. But Madam Namita was giving a lot of challenges in accepting also how we have to proceed in all aspects. That is really great. With your experience, you were comparing with all other universities, how it is going on, what is the challenges, really we accept that. So as an educationist, we have to think it again and again. We have to just make the minds of a teacher to accept, also get their feedback. Then only we could implement the curriculum, as well as students. Students are very active. They wanted to learn many things. Even now online courses are going on programs. Now we are conducting all our courses. The second, third and second PG students. Students are very active. They wanted to learn because they are very young. But we ourselves should be very confined in our teaching learning using of ICT facilities and all other blended programs. We have to follow it, and it takes time. We can't say that within maybe 25 or within 5 years it is not possible, because everything should be prepared.
All right. Ma'am, we have a couple of questions from Professor Madhusharan. Ma'am wants to know what will be the impact of decentralized autonomy of universities on implementation of the national education policy.
Am I audible? Because I'm getting a message that my speaker is not working. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am, we can hear you.
Can I take this question, please?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, I didn't get time to speak about this, but this whole notion about graded autonomy, okay, is very attractive on the one hand. It's like an approach conflict, okay, that you want it because, you can decide your own courses, you'll have the freedom to execute them, to implement them, to strategize them, and your pedagogic practices. But on the other hand, whether you will be recognized, continue to get student bodies, how you will unfold or what your identity will be in the larger market, etc., to attract students, what the solutions for teachers will be moved to contractualization. There are many such issues which come along with it. So the question which has been put is a very relevant question. There are implications which are very positive, which are, like the icing of the cake when you come to course structures and program evolution. But when you come to larger issues about financing, maintenance, regulation, and it's not like a one-time proposition that you will get autonomy. You will be subjected to scrutiny all the time. Just as we do NAC every 5 years, I'm imagining we'll have to get an NIRF accreditation. We'll of course have to get a NAC rating, and there will be the Higher Education Commission sitting on top of us controlling this. So probably there is more safety to go with the university system, and they've allowed that you can be an affiliated college, and you can even change your role definition from being a teaching college to a research college. They've allowed that flexibility. They've allowed colleges to redefine their trajectory and identity in an evolutionary state. So that's my response to this.
Thank you, ma'am. We have another question from Professor Madhusharan. She wants to know, how can we maintain quality with the credit transfer system in the absence of a common curriculum?
I think I raised this. And I spoke about it. So I think Professor Vijayan might be able to, she's much more experienced and limited experience. She's in a very high body. Professor Vijayan, please respond to this.
The Dean of Education, Teacher Education Program. But as you are aware, now UGC is directing us to follow the curriculum developed in various subjects. And now as in home science also. So if universities follow same curriculum, the credit transfer is easy. So that we have to think it over how it should be implemented. All minds should be together, think and implement. And I think if university, you are telling about, yes, we have our own freedom, but the curriculum should be same for all universities, common curriculum. If it is common curriculum followed, then credit earned system is easy. But we have to have coordination between the university from University of Delhi, University of Avinash Lingam University. If a student is moving from Avinash Lingam to Delhi University, then we should have a common understanding about a particular transfer of credit. Then only that will be implemented. And that will be useful for the students. Only 1 or 2 cases, not all students. Also, for example, 1 year after completion, the certificate. Not all students will get a certificate and go, but only few students. If they get married, they are settling in other places, they cannot continue the course in even a BO program. The same system is followed. Hardly 1 or 2, not all students. So we can accept, but we have to work it out in a positive manner. And also we should have an understanding between. Without any ego, we have to go for the quality of education to be given to the students, that is skill-based, academic-based, knowledge-based, and also they become a good entrepreneur and a family.
I just want to add, if I may, please.
Yes.
That the document says very clearly that there should be a seamless transition. They've used this phrase called seamless transition. So if they're talking about a seamless transition from school to college and between colleges and across universities, they're actually promoting what Professor Vijayan is saying, a uniformization model. Whether we agree with it or not, issue. But it's only when the frameworks are uniform, she's right, that there will be this seamless transition or this movement.
In the interest of time, could we take one or two more questions?
We have to ask Professor Chakravarti what their schedule is. Professor Chakravarti, can we take another question?
And we need to ask Arun.
Arun, can we have another question? Or are you?
Yeah, ma'am.
Okay. Please go ahead, Shonima.
Thank you, ma'am. The next question is, do we advocate the necessity of a monitoring committee towards the implementation of this national education policy?
Oh God, this again the Vice Chancellor will take. I'm a small fry. Madam Vice Chancellor will take this question, please.
See, yes, we all know debate is going on. Madam was also telling Higher Education Minister. He was also giving a lot of information. We have to hear the higher education institutes, particularly MHRD and UGC, and the monitoring committee. They have not yet spelled out. It is debating is going on. Maybe if we have a monitoring committee, then that will be looking after the uniform implementation of all aspects in all levels. So I accept monitoring committee maybe, but till now we have not yet heard about establishment of monitoring committee and its role and responsibilities. But it's really a debate. It's a challenge for us. Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Looks like we've covered almost all of our questions. If any of our panelists would like to comment on these discussions.
I think we'll have to complete. It's 1 o'clock, and I think that's the time slot given to us. But thank you so much, and I'm really happy to see that you've raised a number of questions. So I hand it over now to Varsha for vote of thanks.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, Shonima. Honorable dignitaries, distinguished guests, and dear participants, on behalf of the Faculty of Family and Community Sciences of the Maharaja Sayajirao University of Baroda and its entire fraternity and the organizing committee, myself, Dr. Varsha Parikh, Faculty IQAC co-convener, feels immense pleasure to take this opportunity to propose vote of thanks to our eminent speakers, Honorable Vice Chancellor Madam Professor Premavati Vijayan from the Avinashi Lingam Institute for Home Science and Higher Education for Women, Coimbatore, and Professor Namita Ranganathan from the University of Delhi, who spared their time despite of their extremely hectic schedules to grace the webinar with their presence and share their extremely relevant addresses on structural and curricular reforms and implementation strategies for higher education in the context of National Education Policy 2020. I take this opportunity to express my deep regards and gratitude to our pillar of strength, the Honorable Vice Chancellor Sir, Professor Parimal Vyas, for always encouraging us and providing us with opportunities to organize such events. Thank you so much, sir, for your valuable guidance. You have always been great inspiration for the faculties. Your valuable presence has made this webinar more insightful. I also would like to thank University Registrar Dr. K.M. Chudasma sir for his kind support all the time to the faculty. Further, I extend my sincere thanks to the co-host of this webinar, that is IQAC team of the university, headed by IQAC Director Dr. Chakrabarti sir, whose continuous support and cooperation made this endeavor possible. Special thanks to Dr. Arun Anand sir, Deputy Director IQAC, and Dr. Jignesh Pandya sir for extending all technical support to execute this webinar online. I also extend my hearty thanks to Professor Sirimao, Deputy Director of IQAC, for all her support. I take this opportunity to express my sincere thanks to all the deans of the faculties, principals, syndicate and senate members, heads of the departments and professors for their active participation in the webinar. My deep gratitude goes to our Dean Madam, Professor Anjali Karolia, for conceptualizing this timely needed deliberation from such distinguished speakers. Madam, your constant support, guidance and mentorship has always motivated faculty members to work enthusiastically and put in efforts to ensure success of events like this one today. Sincere gratitude to all the heads of the departments, professors, directors and associate directors of the institute and colleagues of the faculty for their active support in organizing this event. I also extend my sincere thanks and appreciation to all my department IQSC coordinators whose tremendous efforts and valuable support have made this event successful. Last but not surely the least, my deep sense of appreciation and thanks to all the participants who chose to be live with us and attended webinar with great enthusiasm and made it a successful event. Once again, I thank each one of you for being with us in this afternoon. Have a wonderful day ahead. Namaskar.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, everyone.